Hi, this is a short screencast on the examiner's report that was written for F7 financial reporting from the June 2013 sitting. Now, the examiner writes these reports for each of the exams sat within the various different sittings for ACCA, and he gives a brief overview on his thoughts of the paper, how students did, and more importantly, were they succeeding at the areas that they should have succeeded in, and were they having difficulties in the areas that he was suspecting difficulties would occur. So just looking at this first paragraph, the opening paragraph unfortunately isn't a very positive one. He's saying that it was a rather disappointing sitting whenever you're comparing it to a trend that has previously been built up from the past couple of years. And this is due to old bad habits cropping up. So what were the bad habits that the examiner seemed to notice? He was picking up that there was a poor coverage of the wider syllabus. So question 1 and 2 are always the same on this paper, and whenever we're looking at his report further on down, he's saying that question 1 and 2 were the best answered. So whenever we're trying to see where these issues are, it would seem that students are tending to focus too much on the question 1, so the consolidation question, and when they're doing this they may be neglecting other areas. But you have to remember that this consolidation question is just one question out of 5 compulsory questions, so we cannot afford to simply neglect the rest of the syllabus and hope that we score 80% of question 1 right, and that's going to help us carry us through and pass this exam. Another area that he saw was a bit of an issue whenever he was reviewing these papers was that there was answers that weren't even attempted in many of the scripts. So in question 1, the second part was asking for an evaluation and for an opinion, and it was only worth 5 marks, but whenever students saw this they probably thought, oh, I don't really know what they're getting at here, and just skip past this. But every mark does count in order to try and get that 50%. And quite a lot of those additional questions are basically common sense questions. So just have a stab at them. Don't spend too long on them. If you really don't know, just have a quick stab and write down something that is sensible, and you'll quite often just pick up 1 or 2 extra marks, which could push you up to that 50%. However, even though it was a disappointing result, he was saying that the script, there was a couple of scripts, or quite a good number of scripts, that are scoring over 70 and even in the high 80s. Now, we don't necessarily want to be scoring just that, that much, but it's good to know whenever he's saying that it's a disappointing exam result, that there were people that had covered the syllabus, and getting 70 or 80%, a fantastic score, is definitely doable. So there were some exam techniques that he's saying were causing problem. This is the number 1 exam technique problem that every student will do, even the best ones: not reading the question properly. If you don't read the question properly, how on earth are you going to be able to get to the final answer that the examiner is looking for? Now, we all know that we've been in an exam and that we are under stress and we are panicking, and you just quickly read through or quickly scan the requirement of the question, and sometimes you even try and make it into something that you want to be answering. Definitely try and get into the habit of slowing down and reading the question carefully to ensure that you are not going off on a complete and utter tangent and thus scoring no points. Poor handwriting. This is something that I myself have struggled with. My handwriting wouldn't be the neatest, and I really had to try and overcome this problem whenever I was in an exam, especially for essay-based examination papers such as audit. The way that I overcame this issue was by laying out my work and just, in the best way possible, so spreading it out. I skipped a line for and on every single page I would, write a sentence, skip a line, and then continue on the 3rd line. This just spaces everything out, and I know you're going to be using an awful lot of paper, and everybody who's environmentally friendly will be going, oh no, what are you doing? But it is an exam, and realistically you're wanting to gain as many marks as you can, and you only have this one chance in this sitting to try and pass it, in the first time or the sitting that you're actually doing in. So use as much paper as you like. You can be sitting using, up to 6 booklets. I think I used about 7 booklets in one of my exams, and you're never going to be penalised for using too many books. Because if the examiner, realistically, if he cannot see or understand or make head nor tail of what you've written down, he's not going to be able to give you the correct mark that you deserve. So just looking more in detail for question 1. In question 1, we were asked to prepare a statement of financial position. So a consolidated statement of financial position was the requirement. Now, quite often this is the one that students are wanting to come up the most, so many people would have been happy. And question 1, you're going into this really well, you should be going into it really well prepared, because there's a number of workings that you should be able to rhyme off on the top of your head and apply to the various different scenarios that you are presented with for the consolidation questions. So there was fair value adjustments, which is something that you should be familiar with if you have done the past paper questions and have been reviewing all the different ways the consolidation questions can be asked. So a fair value adjustment is something that pops up quite recently, and in this paper the plant that the fair value adjustment was needed for, it was below its carrying value. However, some students were treating this as a surplus, which just showed a total misunderstanding as to what a fair value adjustment really was trying to get at and what it was actually for. So this maybe would give whoever's marking your exam paper a bit of a lack of confidence that you actually know what you're doing. So again, he was saying that some people were trying to calculate the time apportioned pre-acquisition losses. But again, if you were reading the question, you would see that this is something that was given to you. So a lot of students are spending time trying to do these calculations, which were not needed. And you could literally just pluck that figure out of the question. So the majority of candidates displayed a good working knowledge of the consolidation techniques. So here, these are your various workings, your goodwill, calculating your net assets and your non-controlling interest. So these are workings that you should know in advance of going into the exam, and it seemed that many people did know them. However, whenever you were trying to use the various different figures, people were, making silly errors or not showing a full understanding of how to actually apply these workings. So the share exchange, which is a really common way of, having to calculate goodwill, you're going to have to determine what the share exchange is for this subsidiary company. That was well handled. However, the loan notes that were issued, that were mentioned in this question, people were trying to base it on the loan notes that were issued. So people were saying the parent has issued a certain number of loan notes, I must use that, but it's actually to be on the number of shares acquired by the parent that these loan notes were issued in relation to. Another area that crops up a lot is the unrealized profit or cash in transit. So unrealized profit was relatively well handled within this question. However, the cash in transit, so the subsidiary had paid some money towards a balance that was sitting in the parent's accounts, and this was not treated correctly. Basically, if you think about it, you just need to think what process do I need to do and take it stage by stage. So the balance should be eliminated in each company. So the payable and receivable would need to be adjusted for this $900,000 that has been paid, and the difference, which is the cash in transit, needs to be added to the bank because it's nowhere at the moment. So you need to add it back into the consolidations. Another issue which I think showed a lack of understanding for quite a lot of people, and something that really should never happen, is that people were trying to time apportion assets and apportion the balances that are sitting in the balance sheet. And if you think about it, this realistically, it is a balance sheet. It's showing you the balance at the year end. So you do not need to time apportion these balances because it just does not make sense. But overall, I think from this examiner's report, you need to take away the various different technique issues that the examiner has pointed out. So ensure that you cover the syllabus. Don't just necessarily concentrate on the consolidations. Always try and answer all the questions. Give it a stab. Do not get too hung up on them now if you really don't know, but definitely give them a stab. Try and ensure that your scripts are relatively neat, so that the examiner can easily mark them and see where you're getting all your answers from and show your workings clearly. Another good thing that you need to try and be able to do is to read the question. If you misinterpret the question and start answering something else, you're going to gain no marks. And this is just something that will come with practicing the question under time pressure. If you do this at home, ensure that you're putting time pressure on yourself, because you need to recreate some of the feelings of pressure that you're going to be dealing with within the exam before the exam day. So thanks very much for listening, and there will be further video on the rest of the examiner's report.